Welcome to Banyen Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyen.com. Since 1970, Banyen Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyen.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Branches of Wisdom, the Banyen Books podcast. I'm your host, Ross McKeechee, and I'm really excited today to be joined by our special guest, Richard Rosen. Before I get to his introduction, Banyen Books acknowledges that although we have people joining us from all over the world for these live stream events, the physical location of Banyen Books and Sound is on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Our guest today is Richard Rosen, who is one of America's most influential authors on yoga practice and philosophy. He began his practice of modern postural hatha yoga in 1980 in Berkeley, California. In 1982, he enrolled in the teacher training program at the BKS Iyengar Yoga Institute in San Francisco, graduating in 1985. In 87, with two friends, one of them, Rodney Yee, he opened the Piedmont Yoga Studio in Oakland, California, which closed its doors for the last time after 27 years in 2014. Richard is a contributing editor at Yoga Journal magazine, to which he has contributed countless articles and columns over the past quarter century. He serves as the president of the board of directors for the Yogadana Foundation. Richard has also had Parkinson's disease for over 21 years and continues to teach yoga and pranayama. He's the author of 6 books on yoga, 5 of them published by Shambhala: The Yoga of Breath, Yoga for 50 Plus, Pranayama, Beyond the Fundamentals, Original Yoga, and Yoga FAQ. And today, Richard Rosen is with Banyen Books in conversation about his newest book, which is titled Yoga by the Numbers: The Sacred and Symbolic in Yoga Philosophy and Practice. Numbers play a meaningful role in the philosophy of many spiritual traditions, and yoga is no exception. In this book, with his distinctive blend of knowledge and humor, Richard Rosen unpacks the fascinating significance that numbers hold in the philosophy and practice of yoga. Banyen Books community, please join me in a very warm welcome for Richard Rosen. Hello, Richard. Thanks so much for being here.
What a nice introduction.
Well, thank you. It's really nice to have you here. I've been excited all week to speak with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So in the introduction of this really fascinating book, Richard, you mentioned in the acknowledgements, you mentioned your late friend and mentor, Georg Feuerstein, and you say his spirituality by the numbers provided the inspiration for this book.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with him and how this book inspired your own?
Georg was a scholar's scholar. I mean, he ran off to an ashram when he was 17 in the Black Forest in Germany. And he was writing academic books on Yoga Sutra when he was like in his 20s. I was still collecting baseball cards. And we met in the mid or late 90s when I did an interview with him for Yoga Journal. And but as a couple of yoga nerds, we hit it off pretty well. So I was associated with him for quite a while till he passed away it was about 10, 12 years ago now. He was a very interesting man. Very interesting man. He was a very knowledgeable scholar. You could ask him anything about yoga, and he had an answer for it.
Neat. And I know that Banyen has a lot of his books on the shelf in our yoga section. They're popular books as well.
Yeah.
Now, in the introduction of the book, you talk about the two questions that you needed to answer before you could proceed in writing. And I'm quoting you here. You said, one, among all the numbers stuffing my computer's memory, which should I include and why? And two, under each general number, which specific instances of that number should I include and why? So how did you go about answering those questions, and what conclusions did you come up with?
Well, it was an interesting situation. I knew there were numbers in yoga, but I didn't realize how many numbers there were, and I was kind of overwhelmed when I started figuring out how many numbers there were. But I finally came to the conclusion that I would go 0 through 10, and focus on those numbers, but take opportunities during the course of the book to inject other important numbers, like, well, of course, 108, 84, 72, things like 18, numbers like that. And then I had to make a decision about which numbers to use to take out for the book. And I wanted it to be relevant. I wanted the numbers to have a relevance for modern readers, but I also wanted to inject a few things that were sort of off the beaten trail and have a little fun with them. So I lean mostly toward mainstream things, but I also injected a few things that were kind of interesting and fun. I like to have a little humor in my books.
Yeah, there's a lot of humor. I had a few good laughs actually, and a lot of interesting off the beaten track kind of points that I never had heard about, being a student of yoga myself. So I really found it fascinating. What was your research process like? I mean, like how many scriptures, texts did you have to consult?
Lots. I have a pretty large yoga library. I've been collecting books on yoga for like 40 years now, and they're all over the place. They're in my room. They're in the living room here, and in the garage, up in the attic somewhere. I don't know where exactly. So I have a lot of books to go to when I need them, and I really, I don't know what to say to that. There were just a lot of books. The one I used quite a bit was called The Universal History of Numbers. It was by a French man, George Ifra, I can't remember his name, but it was very useful. Universal History of Numbers, it was called, I believe.
Right.
And it was a very useful book for numbers. They had a large section on numbers in India.
Okay. Now, speaking of India, in chapter 1, which is titled Zero, the Void by the Numbers, you tell us that Indian culture is where the number 0 was invented or discovered. Although it's disputed who actually first put the number forward. I'm curious about the significance of 0 as a number and why it was the yogis of India who were so suited to discover.
Zero is a mystery. The zero is at the center of the universe, and it's a point of potential. Everything comes out of nothing, as far as the yogis are concerned. And the reason why the number was discovered in India was because a lot of the surrounding cultures were a little bit leery of zero, of nothingness. There was a reluctance to include nothingness in their numbering system, but the Indians were looking for nothingness. In effect, they were looking to clear out their minds and experience an empty mind, a zero mind. And so they were not afraid of having a zero. They were looking for zero. And there's one author that claimed that search for zero in India was one of the reasons why zero was invented in India.
Their minds were so focused on it through their spiritual practice.
Exactly.
I'm going to share a quote here that I really liked. You said, "We might say then that 0 is both the focus and expression of the yogi's tireless quest for the self, which they call Atman Brahman.
Yeah.
Renu Jaina, a professor of mathematics at Jiwaji University in Gwalior, affirms that the idea of spiritual nothingness led to mathematical zero,
Yeah.
adding that the word used in philosophical texts to mean nothing or the void is shunya, the same word later used to mean zero.
Right.
You also share a little story about the etymology of zero and how shunya became zero. Can you share a little bit about that?
I like etymology. When I find a word that I like, that I'm interested in, I usually look at its past, how it developed over time. And so I looked into zero, and I found that it was a string of European languages that it passed through. But I came to the end where the source of the word, and an Arabian word, and it came from a time when there was a visitor from India to the court of Baghdad, and the Sultan there. He told the Sultan there about his text, which was written by Brahmagupta about zero, or had zero in it anyway. And the Sultan then had it translated into Arabic, I guess. And when the translator came to the word shunya, he interpreted it as, I can't pronounce it, but it's spelled Sifr, cipher, I guess. I don't know. And so from there it developed into cipher, which is another word for zero, and then it eventually became the word zero.
That's so neat to see how.
So every time we say the word zero, we're going back to shunya, actually.
Are there a lot of words? I've learned about a few words in your research and studies. Have you found there are a lot of words in the English language that trace back to Sanskrit?
Oh, lots and lots. Yeah, yeah. No, a lot of nose, naza, belly button, nabi. There's a lot of words that are rooted in Sanskrit.
Right, right. I remember one of the ones I remember is mukha, mouth, too. I think.
Mukha, yeah, right.
I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit to our audience about the relationship between the number zero shunya and the concept or the non-concept of Brahman.
Brahman is, how can I say this? Brahman is the source of everything there is, according to some schools of yoga. But Brahman surpasses any kind of description. Words they say fall back from Brahman when they try to approach. So, for an average person, Brahman is nothing, is zero. It I should say has no qualities, and so there's no way to describe Brahman. And for the average person, it's just zero.
And there's this concept of nirguna and saguna Brahman. Can you explain the difference between nirguna and saguna?
Nirguna means having no qualities, and that's the existent that is immanent, transcendent, has no contact with nature, with the world. Saguna is sort of like the creator, like Nirguna's right hand man. Saguna means with qualities, and Saguna is the one that does all the work creating the world, and often becomes a personal god of the people.
Okay, so as practitioners of yoga, there's these two streams. There's nirguna and saguna Brahman. So how does the approach to yoga or self-realization differ with the nirguna or the saguna Brahman practices or path?
The mantra for nirguna is neti neti. It means not this and not that. And so for nirguna, you're constantly distancing yourself from everything around you. If you can name it, it's not Brahman. And so you're withdrawing your attachments, your associations, essentially with the world, since Brahman is transcendent. Neti neti breaks down into two words. It means na iti. When you combine those two words, it becomes neti. And so saguna Brahman is iti. It's all this. And so in one way you distance yourself, and in another way you associate yourself with the world, because the world is Saguna Brahman. That's the mantra for Saguna, iti, this.
Right. So Nirguna is neti, Saguna iti.
Iti, yeah, right.
Okay. So in chapter 2, which is titled Indian Philosophy by the Numbers, Monism, Dualism, and Triadism, or Trika, it seems pertinent for our audience's understanding to have an overview on monoism, dualism, and triadism. So what are kind of the basics that we should understand here about Indian philosophy with those three streams?
Okay, well, monism is everything has a single source. Everything is united in Brahman. That's fairly simple. I mean, the way we look at the world, the first thing that happens to you when you wake up in the morning before you become conscious of anything is you realize that there's a split between you, me, and everything else. There's a natural way. Our natural way of looking at the world is dualistic. I'm in here and you're out there, and everything else is out there. And so it's very difficult for some people to conceive of the idea that everything is joined together. You look out the window, sometimes you see trees and dogs and kids on skateboards, and you kind of figure how all that is joined together. But of course, it's all joined together through the self, through Atman, which is a little spark from Brahman. So monism is everything is one. Everything is one. Dualism, from the classical system, is everything is two, and that's divided between the self and nature, matter. And with classical yoga, you try to distance yourself from nature, from the world around you, and separate yourself out from your associations with matter. Triadism is the best of all worlds. The world is real. The triad is Shiva, Shakti, and you, us. And you try to then you see that the world is real. It's not an illusion. And then you try to associate yourself with everything, with the world, with the world through your practice of yoga. And I think that's the one that suits me the best. To take yourself out and appreciate the world as yourself, and treat the world as yourself.
So in a way, it's identifying with the world as yourself, but also acknowledging that there is other. Is that right?
Right. That's exactly right. Shiva is the passive element, is the witness, is the light, and Shakti is the creative element. It's a kind of a flip on the usual Western view of masculine and feminine principles. In this way of looking at the world, the masculine is the passive, and the feminine is the active, and she creates the world. There's really no difference between Shiva and Shakti. I mean, they're the same thing. We just talk about them for two things for convenience. And so, in essence, you become Shiva, and you become enthralled with the world around you, because it's the dance of the goddess.
What are some examples of these different streams, like within traditions that we might recognize? So, for example, like, where does Vedanta fit in? Is that a monistic tradition?
Absolutely, Vedanta is monist. There's three texts that are three texts that are essential for monism. That is Bhagavad Gita for one, the Brahma Sutras, which is not a well-known text, and the Vedic Upanishads. There's about 11 or 12 of them that are important for Vedanta. For of course, you know this, for classical yoga, for dualism, it's the Yoga Sutra, which was compiled by Patanjali in 3rd or 4th century BC AD. For triadism, it would be the Shiva Sutras, which was a book that was found by a yogi named Vasugupta, and written down, and it essentially says everything is consciousness, and you fit yourself into that consciousness.
What about some of the different Buddhist traditions? I know Banyen, our audience, we tend to have a lot of students of Buddhism here. For instance, like a Vajrayana Buddhist stream or something like that.
I'm not well up on Buddhism.
Oh,
You'd have to
okay,
talk.
okay.
I can get my wife out from the bedroom and she can tell you all about Buddhism.
We'll let her be.
We have a practice room that's divided down the middle. The yogis are on one side and the Buddhists are on the
other. In chapter 4, Shiva and Shakti by the numbers, we've been speaking of this dualism in Shiva Shakti and Shiva and his fives. In section 4 of that chapter, you talk about Shiva and his 5 actions, or kritya, and you write the following. You say, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call Shiva the Lord of fives. He has 5 aspects or faces, pancha anana, 5 actions, pancha kritya, 5 cloaks, pancha kankuka, 5 components, and 5 powers. There are 5 syllables, or pancha akshara, in his main mantra, Nama Shivaya. Yeah. And then you go on to write, in considering Shiva's 5s, we also have to digress and consider the Hindi triple form, Trimurti. Can you explain that to us? So first, what are the Panchakritya? Maybe we can start with that.
Shiva is considered to be the creator, the sustainer, and I don't want to say destroyer, but he reabsorbs the world at the end of its life cycle. Now, in India, it's important to remember that time is cyclical. In the West, it's linear. I mean, there's a creation, the world happens, and then at the end, it comes to an end. And as far as I know from reading the Old Testament and the New Testament, things come to an end, and everybody goes off either to heaven or hell. But in India, time is cyclical, and there's one creation follows another, and the creation, each world lasts for billions and billions of years. So Shiva, at the end of the life cycle of a world, reabsorbs the world back into the primal matrix and recycles it, and then recreates another world out of that material. The other two are is called can't think of the Sanskrit. Shiva hides himself to be able to create the world. It's like there's a power pole outside my house here that has a transformer on it. And so the electricity is passed through the transformer and then fed into the house so that it steps down the electricity so it won't blow up my circuits. And that's what Shiva does. He hides himself from himself and creates the world, and then he goes looking for himself in the world. And then the fifth one is this grace. We always have Shiva's grace waiting for us. Now, he took over those 3 functions: creation, sustenance, and I hate to say the word destruction, but that's what it is. From the Trimurti, from the Trinity, from Brahma, who is the creator deity, and Vishnu, who is the sustainer, and then Shiva was the third one in that Trimurti, who was the recycler, I guess. Right.
Okay, great. Now, 5 seems like it's a big number. It comes up a lot. Would you say that's one of the numbers that you saw the most in your research, or?
One of the numbers, yeah, but a lot of those numbers are fairly common. 3 is very common too, in a lot of different ways. 7 was also common, but yeah, 5 is right up there. I mean, I can't really say which one was the most common, but certainly 5 is among them. 1 is also very. Now I'm getting into the thicket here. They're all pretty significant.
Yeah,
probably 5 and 3, and I don't know. 5 and 3 are very significant numbers.
They're right up there, yeah. Well, in chapter 8, stages and obstacles by the number, you talk about the Panchaklesha, and I'm really interested about the Panchaklesha. Can you give us an overview of the Panchaklesha, the 5 causes of suffering, according to Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras?
Well, the first one, the big one, the Papa Klesha is avidya. Vidya means to know, and avidya means not to know. And what that means is that you don't know who you are. I hope I'm not upsetting anybody out there that's listening. But according to Patanjali, we are we are the Purusha, we're the self, which is an immaterial, static, eternal entity. I mean, entity is not the right word, but and so
So the five, the pancha
oh
kleshas.
yeah. So avidya is the idea that we are who we are, that self, but we don't know that, and that's the source of suffering, because we know in our hearts that we are the self, but we're not conscious of it. But um, there's something that sort of hints at the fact that we're the self, and that we're missing out on that, and that creates a sorrow. I prefer to call it sorrow rather than suffering. Suffering is kind of an extreme word, but we feel sad. We know something in our life is missing, but we don't know quite what, and we try to fill it up with other things like money or possessions or fame or whatever. And of course, it doesn't work. It's a bottomless pit. We just keep shoveling stuff into it, and it's just not. It's never going to fill it up. So avidya is the main klesha. And then it has four friends. Two go together pretty closely: raga and dvesha, and that's things that you want and things that you don't want. And that comes out of ignorance. Things that you think will help you, and things that you think that won't help you, you push away. But so raga devesha, grabbing and pushing away. The next one is called asmita, which is egoism, and that again is a problem, because you visualize yourself as a separate individual, and you're not. Ultimately, you're the self, and so you're stuck in your ego. And then the last one is abhinavesha, which means going toward dwelling. In other words, you cling to life. And in the classical system, I hate to say this, but that's a problem. You're trying to just distance yourself from your life, because it creates suffering or sorrow anyway. And so abhinavesha is clean. Even Patanjali says even the wise ones cling to life.
I want to zone in on this abhinavesha. You say that this clinging to life is an obstacle, and I'm quoting you here. You say this yoga, remember, is I think you're referring to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. This yoga, remember, is focused on withdrawal from normal human connection, from movement and breathing, from matter itself, including when the time comes of having attained the nosebleed heights of the eighth limb, our material body. From our very limited self-ignorant perspective, this is what we call death. From the yogi's enlightened view, however, this is kaivalya, isolation. Such is one of the necessary outcomes of Patanjali's dualism, in which the self is favored over nature. And you go on to mention that the practice of modern yoga has moved off in the opposite direction.
Thank goodness.
Can we discuss that direction a little bit, and what abhinavesha can look like within that context?
Sure. Abhi means to go toward, and nivesha means to dwell. And it means in modern yoga, you go toward life. You encourage life. You live your life to the fullest, rather than withdrawing from it. And that's the way I feel about modern yoga. Modern yoga is life affirming, whereas many of the older Indian schools were life denying. And so I really feel that abhinavesha can be turned around and made a positive force, interpreting as going toward your life and entering into it fully.
And is it, am I right in thinking that this is more of a tantric perspective then, where we're actually bringing ourselves so fully into life that you transcend through that going into?
Yeah, because the life in classical yoga, matter is is ignorant, is nescient. It has no self-awareness. That's provided by the Purusha, by the self. But in triadism, in Trika, the world is the body of the goddess, and it's filled with intelligence and creativity. And so you want to enter into that and experience it to the fullest. That's what Shiva wants you to do.
Okay. Moving on to a huge topic. This is a huge area of discussion, dharma and karma.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just wondering, can you just give a little bit of an explanation for our audience as to the depth and breadth of the Indian culture's understanding around dharma and karma?
Dharma means holding, something like holding. There's two dharmas. There's a dharma of the universe. The universe runs according to a certain set of rules, which is called dharma. And each one of us has a dharma as well. Well, in classical tradition, in the yoga tradition, everybody has a dharma, which is determined by their caste. And so your behavior is in large part determined by which dharma you belong to, which dharma you have. For example, in the Bhagavad Gita, which you know well, Arjuna at first doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to kill his relatives, his teachers, or whatever. And Krishna is flabbergasted. He says, "You can't not do that. You're a kshatriya. You're a warrior, and your dharma is to fight." And so he goes on, as you know, to convince Arjuna that's the right thing to do. So it's said that to do your own dharma poorly is better than to do someone else's dharma well. And so your dharma the universe keeps an eye on you to make sure that you fulfill your dharma. And if you do, that puts you in tune with the universe. The universe likes that very much. But if you go against your dharma, then the universe doesn't like that at all, and you build up karma because of that. And then you have to work off that karma. It's a karmic debt. The problem with that is that you just keep generating more karma as you try to work off what you've already accumulated.
One of the things that you explain is you talk about interested and disinterested action. What are those two, interested and disinterested action?
Well, I don't know. I know what disinterested action is. I don't know how to do it exactly, but interested action is when you want something for what you're doing. You do something and you expect a result, and that builds up karma. Disinterested action is something that you do as a sort of a sacrifice or a gift to the deity, that you don't expect anything from it, and that doesn't build karma. You're free of karma if all of your actions are disinterested.
Okay, and there's this principle that the karma we generate is what leads us to reincarnation, to be reborn.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that work exactly?
Good question. But like I say, you have a karmic debt. You build it up as you live, and usually one life isn't enough to pay off the debt. And the universe is like a bank; they expect to be paid back eventually. And so you've got to reincarnate to work off the karmic debt. And that, like I said, the problem is once you reincarnate, you accumulate more debt. So it's like you just keep going back to life. You keep reincarnating, trying to work off the debt, but you're just building up more and more debt all the time. So the solution is to break free of that samsara, it's called, and stop generating karma. And I have to say that some people say it's good karma, but karma is karma. Good karma, bad karma, it's all the same in the end. I mean, bad karma has bad consequences in your next life. If you generate a lot of bad karma, you get demoted to it, like a dog or a cat or whatever. But in this country, being a dog is not so bad. Yeah, you don't want good karma particularly. I mean, it's better than bad karma, but karma is karma, and you're going to reincarnate because of it, no matter what.
I've heard it said that the karma itself isn't what leads us to rebirth. It's that our attachment to our actions and their results, which I think is what you were pointing to with the disinterested action, is it not?
Right. Well, the attachment creates karma, and that's what causes us to reincarnate. I'm not so sure that's so bad. I wouldn't mind being reincarnated. I like being alive.
Can you tell us about the three states of karma? Sanchita, Prarabdha, and Agami karma?
Well, the first one is just the karma you're carrying around in your backpack, and then you just accumulate over how many incarnations you've gone through. The second karma is the one that's operative in your life now, and that karma has determined, the quality of your life, how long you'll be living. I mean, the karma that the present karma controls your life. It determines what's going to happen to you, and the last one is just future karma that's going to come up in your next that's going to be manifested in a life down the road. So you're karmic up, and no matter which way you go, back or forth, you'll always have that karma following you around.
There's no
And that's
way.
that's one of the goals of classical yoga, is to withdraw from the karma.
In other words, to bring yourself to a place where you're no longer generating karma,
Exactly.
like through
To
withdrawals.
separate you, to separate yourself out from matter, and so not being involved in the world, you don't generate any more karma.
I'm wondering if I can hone in on what you said. This seems like a big theme that runs through this book, actually, is your discussion around the classical form where we're withdrawing from matter versus more the tantric approach, or what you're saying in the modern yoga world, more where we're entering the world. And you just mentioned, I don't know if it's so bad. I like being alive, or reincarnating. Um, what is your interest around that, in terms of, is this something that has been an ongoing point of debate, or just a different ideology through the yogic system since the beginning, or is this, in your eyes, is this something that's newer?
You mean reincarnation?
No, I mean the difference between withdrawing from matter and entering matter, and what's more
It's
preferable in terms of life
Well,
and withdrawal.
in the older schools of yoga were, like I said earlier, body negative. The Upanishads are the same way. They don't like being embodied. They have some very horrible things to say about being embodied. The Yoga Sutra also feels that embodiment is suffering, or sorrow anyway. And so the point of these practices is to withdraw, to get away from sorrow, because it's kind of like, you're alive, and there's times when you're not feeling so well, and there's times when you're feeling better. Um, rather than accepting the fact that life has its issues, its problems, you just sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater and just withdraw from life altogether. But in the tantric view, the world is a beautiful place. Well, it could be anyway, I suppose. And you're not interested in leaving it. There's a difference between Videha Mukti and Jivan Mukti. Videha Mukti is bodiless release, freedom, and that means leaving the world. Jivan Mukti means you reach enlightenment, and you decide, well, this is a great place to be. I'm going to stay around as much as I want. And so you get these stories of these yogis who've lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, roaming through the universe at will. So there's a list of it in the Hatha Pradipika, in the first chapter. There's 30 or 35 of them.
And have those masters or beings, are they said to have gone beyond suffering, even though they're living an embodied existence?
They're free of suffering, and they have magical powers. And I mean, I don't know anybody like that, but that's what Patanjali, not Patanjali, Swatmarama probably did.
I'm wondering if we could jump a little bit and talk about some of the common distortions that we might see in terms of how yoga is being taught and practiced in our modern Western culture. What have you seen as some of the bigger distortions or misunderstandings about yogic philosophy or culture?
I wouldn't use the word distortion. That's really not fair.
Okay.
Um, um, Yoga in India is an old man, right? It's been around for at least 2,500 years, probably more. But yoga in this country is a baby, right? It's like maybe Vivekananda is usually credited with bringing yoga to this country, but that's sort of not true. I mean, yoga in this country is probably 80 years old, maybe at the most. Indra Devi brought, well, that's not true, but it's less, it's maybe 100 years old, let's say. And so we're babies, yoga babies. And so we're feeling our way into what yoga really is. And obviously, too, yoga has been transplanted into a new environment. And when that happens, I mean, think of the differences between Patanjali's India and today. I mean, the differences are enormous. And so it's inevitable that yoga has to undergo some kind of change, and people are sort of feeling their way in trying to find new ways. Of course, there's a little bit of exploitation going on in that too. But Georg never really cared for modern yoga. He never really talked about it very much. He was a true spiritual person, and he he didn't like what modern yoga was all about at all. But modern yoga is helping people get into the practice and helping people to understand their bodies better. And I think postural yoga is very important for different reasons.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm wondering, like, you mentioned there's some appropriation or one of the things, and you just talked about, the very physical oriented practice is helping bring people to the deeper understanding. Can we hone in on that a little bit and just talk about, let's say I'm someone who's fairly new to yoga and I'm going to a studio and practicing, and I'm enjoying the very physical oriented practice. It feels great in my body. What would you say to someone who's curious to understand what a different approach to yoga might look like, to be introduced to the idea that maybe there's something deeper here, and how if we approach it only through the physical, we might miss out on something?
Well, I haven't read a book, some kind of. I mean, that's what I would do. I would recommend some kind of book, a simple book that doesn't get too extreme, and just ask them to read that, and then come back to me and tell me, and ask me what they thought, and tell me what they thought, and ask any questions that they'd like to ask. So but I'd have them look into the background first before anything else.
Okay. So take some time to do a little bit of study and understand.
Exactly. Yeah. Study is good to a certain extent. You can overdo it, like I've done in the past. You've got to practice.
Right. I'd like to jump, if we can. There's a question here from Sabina in our audience, Richard, who
Uh-huh.
says, Richard, thank you for this engaging presentation. Although I'm a superstitious person and enjoy letting numbers influence my decisions, I am also thinking of how much of our life, our existence, is immeasurable. Are numbers one of our ways of making things more easily comprehensible to us or controllable?
Well, the number book is not like numerology or anything like that. I'm not sure if that's what she's referring to, but the point behind the numbers tell a story that's often hidden from view because people just take numbers for granted. So, for example, the number 4 is number of completion, and so when you see the number 4, whatever its numbering is complete in and of itself. That nothing needs to be added to it. So numbers. Well, for one thing, numbers help to organize material in organized in a rational or logical way. But they also have a little bit of something behind them that's important to know about, like zero, for example. A lot of my friends don't think zero is a number. We've had a long conversation, let's say, about zero, and they feel like it's just a placeholder. But according to all the mathematicians I look at, it's a number. It's a number between 1 and -1. And so, to see the number zero in yoga, it means something, as we discussed, and one. and 2 and 3. All those numbers say something about the practice you're doing.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, Richard, is the balance of Shiva and Shakti in our practice. I'm jumping again here, but I know this is an important element in life and practice. How do you approach teaching this concept to your students, the balance of Shiva and Shakti in our practice and in our life?
One of the things about modern yoga is that it's too fast. It's too rajasic, I guess is the word that the yogis would use. It's too much exercise. There's no balance between doing and not doing. And so one of the things I try to teach my students is that don't try so hard. Trying so hard creates tension, it creates, grit your teeth and squeeze your eyes and do all sorts of strange things with your body. That's not yoga. That doesn't really help. You want to do the practice, but you want to watch out that you're not forcing yourself to do the practice. And so one of the things I'm really insistent on in my classes, and I succeed with some people and I don't with others, is that don't try so hard. Give it a chance to let it happen to you, and be a little bit more passive about what you're doing. It's mostly a problem with the men, but what few men actually go to yoga nowadays in my classes. And I get in there sometimes and there's 15, 20 women in the room and there's me. And I always say, I feel overwhelmed. But it's usually the men that really want to do the hard pounding work. And it's easier to convince the women that they should back off a little bit and take it easy on themselves.
Right. And that actually allows for the pranic flow through our system.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You see it in the groins all the time. We do a reclining leg stretch with a strap over one leg stretched up in the air, and you see people pulling on the strap as if that's going to make the stretch bigger in the back of the leg, and it sort of does, but it also hardens the groins, and when the groins are hard, the breath is stuck. You can't go anywhere. And so one of the things I always do is tell people not to pull on the strap to increase the stretch, but to just pull down on the foot, provide resistance to push up against. And my regular students do that they just automatically now. And I always have an issue with people that come in right away and they start yanking on the strap and trying to keep, stretch themselves out as much as they can. You have to be patient when you do yoga. If you force yourself, it just doesn't work as well.
And then the idea is that bringing that patience and that balance of Shiva and Shakti into our practice should translate into how we live our lives as well, right?
Harmony. It creates a feeling of balance. Absolutely. And I always make the point that your yoga practice is not something that's isolated from your life. It's practice for your life. It's not just practice for stretching your hamstrings or whatever. And so when you go out into the world, your movements, your sitting, your walking are your asanas. Your breathing, being aware of your breath, is your pranayama, and the way you speak to people are your mantras. Is your mantras. So you want to integrate your life into your practice.
How important is yama niyama? I know you've written quite a lot on yama niyama over the years in terms of life practice.
For classical yoga, essentially, yamas and niyamas are preparation for meditation, and nothing much more than that. But they also have very practical uses as far as behavioral injunctions are concerned. So you want to tell the truth, you don't want to hurt anybody, you want to study and things like that. But I went through Georg's Encyclopedia of Yoga one time, and there are at least 100 different yamas. And so a lot of people think that there's just 5 and 5 yamas and niyamas, but there's dozens and dozens of them, and a lot of them have a lot more expansive than what you find in the Yoga Sutra. For example, there's a yama that says you work for the good of all the world, which is the one I like the best.
Where do you find that particular
There's one in the Yoga Sutra, not in the Bhagavad Gita somewhere. I don't remember. I'll find it for you and send it to you when I get a chance.
so it's actually cultivating this quality of working for the good of the world.
Helpfulness, yeah, working for the good of the world. I can't think of the Sanskrit right now, but yeah, there's a couple of them like that. And there's a lot of emphasis on compassion and generosity and hospitality, humility, which is a good thing for a lot of yoga teachers. There's just some very positive. So I encourage I'm doing a training right now at the school where I teach, and I've given out all these yamas and niyamas to the students and asked them to look them over and try to pick some up, make up your own yamas and niyamas, some things that you really resonate with, and can really get into it for a practice.
And these things that we're cultivating, you mentioned that they were traditionally a preparation for meditation. What does that
Everything.
mean?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, what does that mean? How would practicing something like nonviolence, ahimsa, prepare me for meditation?
Because when you meditate, you're trying to calm yourself down, and violence is extremely stimulating. You don't go to see movies called Star Peace. You go to see some movies called Star Wars. The same thing with truth or satya. If you're looking for truth, it's not going to help you if you're going to lie. I mean, they have consequences in the world, but basically they're there to clear out the underbrush and get you ready to sit for asana. That was Patanjali's thrust. He was interested in Kaivalya. So everything in that book is geared to Kaivalya, to getting you there.
I love the way you close the book. And this has been a theme running through our conversation this evening too, Richard. You talk about the aim of tantric practice being more of an expansion into union with everything, rather than that removing of consciousness from matter. This is obviously an important distinction for those of us who are considering our approach to yoga and understanding what our kind of aim is in our practice. I'm wondering if, just as kind of our closing thoughts, can you expand on this a little bit for us and give us some clues as practitioners looking to kind of find our direction? How can we skillfully understand what we're going for in our practice and how to choose which direction to go?
Well, my practice is seeing myself and everybody else. So when I drive down the street and somebody double parks in front of me, I don't ram into the back of the car. I say, well, I do that too. So that's the first thing I always say to myself when somebody does something that I don't care for. And I say, I look at myself first to see how I've done it. So, I want to make sure that I associate myself with everybody as best I can. I mean, there's some people that are really difficult to associate with, but I'm trying to look at, my wife has a friend who's a psychic, and I don't psychics, but I helped him break up a sidewalk one time, and he gave me a free session. And I went in and I sat down, and he contacted his entity, and he said, one thing he said to me that really stuck with me, he says, you're not working with people's bodies, you're working with people's souls. And I've always remembered that one comment, because that's the way I look at my students when they come in the room. I look at their soul as they come in the room to see what they need, to see what I think they need, and then how I can help them.
That's wonderful. I just want to, I can't recommend this book enough, honestly, Richard, as someone who practices yoga and is very interested in the study. This is a really helpful and fascinating book. I encourage everyone to check it out. Yoga by the Numbers, the Sacred and Symbolic in Yoga Philosophy and Practice. We've been speaking with Richard Rosen, who I'm very grateful to. Thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah.
Anytime.
And wishing you all the best. And thanks to our wonderful audience, as always. Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyen Books and Sound, Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele. The show is edited by Abdo Habani. And I'm your host, Ross McKeechie. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyen Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyen.com.